Welcome to this programming tutorial. In today's tutorial, we're going to look at programming basics. You can use the chapters below to see the different sections if you want to skip ahead. One thing to note when programming is that computers read programs from top to bottom, much like a recipe book when you're baking a cake. This is an important thing to remember throughout the course. Let's start from where we left off last lesson. I'm going to write print hello world. Print is in a different color. Print is known as a subroutine. A subroutine is something that will come in a later lesson. For now, understand that subroutines can be written like this, with a bracket indicating what you want to execute. In this case, I want to print hello world. Let's now look at what this actually is. Hello world is a piece of data, but computers need to understand what data type it is. This is because computers don't know what to do with data, and we have different data types to tell computers how to react differently to data. Let me give you an example. If I write 1 plus 1 like this, I run my program, you'll see we get an output that's not quite what you might think. It just puts them together. However, if I remove the speech marks over here, and I run the program again, you'll see it actually adds them together. So we use data types so that computers can react to the data differently. Let's look at all the data types that we can use. We can use a character, which is a single letter, number, or symbol. As long as it's by itself, it's known as a character. We can use a string, which is written as any sentence. A string is denoted by one or more characters. Think of it as a list or a joining of multiple characters at once. We can also have an integer, which is any whole number that can be either positive or negative. We have a real number, represented here as a float, which can be written as a decimal. Again, either positive or negative. So think of decimal numbers in this case as a real number. We can also have a boolean, which is a true or false value. In Python, we can write that as true, or we can write that as false. Now, looking at all these different data types, it's impossible to understand how we can use them in the context of a program. To be able to use these data types, we'll need to be able to run them in a subroutine, or we need to store them for use later on. For example, if I write print here, I can write hello, and I can multiply that by 5. On computers, the asterisk symbol means multiply. When I run this program, it'll get that string, and it'll repeat it 5 times. I can also add 2 words together as you saw before. But now let's look at a method we can use to store all those data. This is something called variables. A variable is a container or a box that can store data. It can also have the data in it changed. Let's have a look at how we can create a variable in Python. I'll create a variable that stores my name. To start with, I'll give it a name. Because it stores my own name, I'll just call it name, but you can call variables whatever you want, as long as you do not have spaces between the words. Next, we're going to use an assignment operator. An assignment operator is a symbol that's understood by the program to assign data to a variable. Think of it as a symbol that means we're going to put it inside a box. In this case, it's an equal sign. Then we're going to have our data. In this case, I want to create a string. So I'm going to use speech marks to create a string and write Mr. McAuliffe. Keep in mind that the assignment operator is the equal sign. So here we have the data Mr. McAuliffe of type string assigned to the variable titled name. We can also do this with any other data type. Let's create one for my age. In this case, I'll call it age. I'll create an assignment operator and I'll write 28. At any point in the program, I can redefine age as another number. But remember, programming reads top to bottom. So if I print my age over here and I print my age beneath it, notice what happens when I run the program. The program reads age as 28 over here, because that's what I've defined it as. And then because I change it in the next line, that's what it outputs as over here. We get 28 and 29. Also notice that when I print variables, I just have to write the name without any speech marks, much like an integer. Let's now take this further and look at constant variables. A constant variable is a variable that cannot be changed. Python doesn't use constant variables, but we can still define them so that we know ourselves that we don't want that variable to change. To write a constant variable in Python, and we'll use one for my eye color, we can do it in capital letters and separate the spaces using an underscore. In this way, we'll know later in the program that this is something that we don't want to change. But keep in mind, Python doesn't use constant variables. In another program, it would come up with an error if you try to change this. Let's now look at some other terms. We can concatenate data, that means to join data, and it's written like this. By writing a plus symbol. For example, if I write hello plus world, it'll concatenate or join these two together. Like that. Let's now try and concatenate a string and a different data type. In this case, I'll write hello 15. You'll notice this comes up with an error, and it says can only concatenate or join a string to a string, but not an integer to a string. In programming, it's ill-advised to join two pieces of data or two types of data together. To fix this, what we can do is we can put speech marks around the 15. However, let me present a different scenario. I'll write my name over here again, followed by my age, and I'll print them out. In this case, I will still get an error because age is an integer and Mr. McAuliffe is a string. So to fix this, rather than changing age to a string, I can convert age down here into a string. To do that, I can do something called typecasting. This is when you change the data type. There are multiple methods we can use, multiple subroutines. We can use str to convert something to a string, int to convert something to an integer, chr to convert something to a character, ord to convert something into a number, and we can use float to convert something to a real number. Let's try and use these throughout our program. If we write here int, it'll convert age into an int, which is kind of pointless because it's already an integer. We want both of these to be a string, so let's change int to str for string. Now on line 4, it'll convert age to string. This will only happen on line 4. Let's run it. And there we go. Keep in mind, if you want to store age as a string, we can either write str over here, or we can also convert it later by doing age equals the string version of itself. This way you can change variables. Let's try some other ones. I can convert to integer using int, or I can convert float to which is a real number, a decimal. But I can also use some special ones, like chr. This will take an integer like 87, and convert it into a character. Let's see what 87 is as a character. 87 is capital W. I can check this by using the opposite, ORD, to convert a character into an integer. 87. So you can typecast a lot of different variables. Keep in mind, some variables work well together. For example, if I add 15 plus 15.5, in this case I'm adding an integer to a real number. If I run this, you'll see it correctly adds them together. Real numbers and integers are very closely related, so they act the same way. It's the same with characters and strings. Characters and strings are near enough the same, so they act very similar. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful.